Hello, Sid Roth here. Welcome to my world, where it's naturally supernatural. We had the high privilege, before the book, The Harbinger, even came out, of interviewing. We were the first ones in the country. We had a CD series of The Harbinger by Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, which has gone on to be a New York Times bestseller. Over 2 million of these books have been distributed. But Jonathan called me the other day, and he said, Sid, God has given me a revelation. I call it the mystery of the Shmita. And it's so big that it affects everything we as a people are personally doing and will affect the rise and fall of the United States of America. You know, the best-selling book, The Harbinger, which means the warning of judgments, they're reappearing again. There's 9 of them. But one of the ones that is reappearing is the understanding and the revelation of a biblical term called the Shmita. Now, Rabbi Jonathan, what is the Shmita?
The Shmita is an ancient mystery, goes back over 3,000 years to Moses, Mount Sinai, yet it is affecting everything from 9/11 to the rise and fall of the economy, to the crashing of the stock market, to the rise and fall of nations, everything from World War I, World War II, what is happening right now, and what will happen. It is the most precise, mind-boggling, biblical mystery, and it's coming true now.
Now, when you talked about it in your book, The Harbinger, did you have any idea that this would so affect us today in our everyday life? I mean, and how big it is?
I knew it was happening. I mean, at least in a certain period, but I had no idea that it didn't just happen then. It's been affecting us, every single one who's watching right now. It's affecting every life since the day we were born and the future. I had no idea until very recently how big it was. It's really mind-blowing.
Okay, let's just start with basics.
Yeah.
What does the Shmita mean? What does the word mean?
The Shmita means the release, but it could also mean, literally, it can also mean the fall or the collapse in Hebrew. It can also mean the shaking. And what it is this. In Mount Sinai, God gave this law to Israel. Every 7th year, you would have a Sabbath year, a year of rest. That rest was called the Shmita. There was no sowing, no reaping of the land. And on the last day of the Shmita, the day is called Elul 29 on the biblical calendar. On that last day, something unique happens. All credit is wiped away. All debt is wiped away. The financial accounts of the nation are wiped clean. Now, this was to be a blessing. But when Israel turned against God, the Shmita comes back as a sign of judgment on a nation that is driving God out of its life. So this is where it affects us particularly today. So the thing is that the Shmita affects, as you can see, the economy right away. Today it would be a recession or a depression. I mean, and the Wall Street, it literally is the collapse of our financial realm. So what we're going to see is...
So we're going to have a collapse that's not a blessing. We're going to have the judgment type of collapse.
We have already seen it happen, and it's actually getting more specific. The last 2 Shmitas have been so exact, so precise since 9/11, and we're coming up to another one as well. So what we're going to see, and this is what blew me away, is it has been affecting everything in our lives from really... There's no end to it. It's amazing, and it's precise, down to the days, the hours, even the seconds.
Okay, give us some background. Like they explained every 7 years.
Yeah, every 7th year. So you have this rest, and here's the keys to know, because we're gonna see what's happening right now. The keys are, number one, you have the 7-year cycle. So the 7-year cycle, everything stops, and then you have this financial wipeout.
Okay. According to the Bible, every 7th year,
yes,
we have just a blessing from God, or if we haven't done what God's asked, it becomes a judgment.
It became a judgment. Actually, in 586 BC, wiped out Jerusalem. They were in Babylon for 70 years, and the Bible says it was because it was timed according to how many Shmitas they broke. So it becomes this amazing thing. It not only wipes away accounts, it can wipe away cities and nations.
You know, if someone is a non-believer in the Bible as being from God, just looking at these patterns that are affecting us today, that have affected us historically, nations being rising and falling, economies rising and falling. I mean, it's just, how could anyone not be a believer in the Bible?
Yeah, amazing. And here, Sid, if you look, here's an example. If you look at the last 40 years of our financial history, you look for, there's 5 great turning points or long-term collapses combined often with recessions. When did they take place? I'll give you an example. 1973, first one. Second one, 1980. Third, 1987. Fourth, 2000. And fifth, 2007, Great Recession. What do you notice about all of them? Every one of them is separated by a 7-year period. I mean, 73 to 80, 7 years. 80 to 87, 7 years. 2000 to 7 years. Are any of them linked specifically to the year of the Shmita? 1973, year of the Shmita. 1980, Shmita. 87, Shmita. 2000, Shmita. 2007, the Shmita. Every single 100% of them happened according to the appointed time in the Bible. Some of these things went down to the seconds. So if you go, listen, take it larger. Go to the greatest crashes in history, and you'll find, do any of them take place linked to the year of the Shmita? The majority of them do. I'll give you an example. This is the 3rd greatest crash in history, 1937 and 38. When did the Shmita happen? 1930, 37 and 38, same year. In fact, when the Shmita begins, the next day, Wall Street collapses. Here's another one, the Great Recession. When does that happen? It is 2007 and 8. When does the Shmita happen? 2007 to 8. And on the exact day of the Shmita appointed to wipe away the financial accounts, Elul 29, the whole stock market collapses. The Great Depression is even linked to this. When you have this peak day of the Shmita, right after that comes the greatest month collapse in American history. I mean, it is mind-boggling.
You know, Jonathan, I used to be a stockbroker on Wall Street. If I had only understood these biblical principles, if I was a mutual fund manager, I could be the top mutual fund in the world. I don't understand. Maybe that's why there's going to be a great wealth transfer. The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. But we have to understand these biblical principles. When we come back, I'd like to find out the future of America based on the Shmita. How about you?
We'll be right back to It's Supernatural.
I am amazed, Rabbi Jonathan, how big this is. This isn't some little principle. This affects everything. Explain.
Yeah, the Shmita has so many facets. It's not only, now we just touched on how it's affecting the economy, Wall Street, everything, but it actually affects even physical realities. And the first thing, one of the mysteries in here is called the mystery of the towers. In the Bible, the word for tower is migdal. That comes from a Hebrew word gadal, which means greatness. So there's a link between towers being built and greatness, or, you know, a nation's greatness or its pride, its glory. We're great, you know.
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of? The Tower of Babel.
Exactly.
That's what they were trying to do. We're going to make a name for ourselves. We're going to build a tower up to heaven.
That's exactly it. Now, could there be, now there's a mystery here, could it be that the rising of the highest towers in the world actually marked the rising of nations and powers? And we're going to see, this is linked to the Shmita, it's amazing. For instance, from the Middle Ages, the highest towers were in Europe, the center of power was in Europe. But a change took place in about 1870. There's the greatest tower rises up in a new land. It's America. 1870. The next year, America becomes the strongest economic power on earth. The mantle goes from Britain to America. So the rise of the tower actually marks it. From then on, America builds the highest towers on earth as its power keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. But we're going to see there's a link with the Shmita. Because in 1945, at the end of the Second World War, height of American power, there's a plan to build a new tower that's going to represent America's greatness. It's the World Trade Center. 1945 is the year of the Shmita. The tower is conceived, the World Trade Center, year of the Shmita. It's begun they start building it in 1966, year of the Shmita. It's built for a 7-year cycle, the exact cycle of the Shmita, 7 years of the Shmita. Finished in 1973, year of the Shmita. And then finally, 2001, it's destroyed in the year of the Shmita. Now, here's a link. Now, what's the towers? Towers are about rising. The Shmita is about falling. Actually means let fall. The tower is about the glory of man. The Shmita is about humbling the pride of man or the pride of a nation. So here we see in the Bible, the Shmita wipes out accounts we saw that are built up. It also wipes out realities that are built up too. And so here in the year of the Shmita, actually as the Shmita gets to its peak, that's when 9/11 happens. 9/11 happens at the peak of the Shmita, the last week, when it's getting ready for the day of nullifying, wiping things out. And actually, the collapse of the tower causes the collapse of Wall Street. You have the greatest, so you have the collapse of a tower, the pride of a nation, and you have the collapse of Wall Street at the same time on the day of the Shmita, which means that even the timing of 9/11 was determined, had to be determined exactly by the ancient mystery of the Shmita. And here's the prophetic things with this, Sid. This is just one of the things, that if the rise of a tower speaks of the rise of a nation, what does the fall of a tower speak of? It's a warning of the future of America.
So as you point out, a harbinger was 9/11.
Yeah.
It's a warning. How many warnings do we get before judgment? What's a pattern?
God is merciful. With the harbinger, yeah, exactly right. This follows the harbingers, and not only was that a harbinger, but then there's a tower going up right now at ground zero, which in the harbinger, it's the fourth harbinger. Well, that's linked to the Shmita as well. There are things happening since the harbinger came out. It's been coming true, and that's linked to the Shmita, that there are signs appearing. We can't get into it, but the signs have to do with that tower about what is rising up at ground zero, which is linked to defiance. Because remember, this tower also, the tower that's rising now, was conceived in the year of the Shmita at the same time, with that vow that about defiance that was made on Capitol Hill. And it's probably going to be completed, most likely, in the year of the Shmita that's coming. So that's just a little bit of the Shmita and the tower. But this also is about the rise and fall of nations. The Shmita gives the key about when nations rise and fall. It has to do with America. Let me give you an example how this mystery is so big, it's affected everything. Shmita, it actually can be taken as, I said, shaking or falling or collapsing. 1917, you have the year of the Shmita. You have a collapse on Wall Street, but you also have a shaking of the nations called the First World War. The Shmita is about collapsing. In that war, you have the collapse of powers, collapse of four empires: the German Empire, the Hungarian, the Russian, the Ottoman, all collapse in the year linked to the Shmita. And you also have the Shmita is linked to the rise of nations. 1917 is the year that begins America's rise of world power on the stage. It enters the First World War. This is considered that. And so you have the beginning of this rise. But if you take it 4 Shmitas later, which is 28 years, interesting, 4 in the Bible is a number of kingdoms. It takes you to 1945, and you have another global cataclysm. You have the shaking of the world, shaking World War II coming. You have literally, actually, Hitler's attacks began in 1938. That was the year of the Shmita. Goes 7 years till 1945 until it's over. Shmita. The Holocaust, Kristallnacht. It's noted as 1938 as the fateful year. Year of the Shmita. Ends 1945, year of the Shmita. When you reach the peak of the Shmita, you also get the peak of World War II, summer of 1945. You're approaching the Shmita's day of nullifying things. Well, this is the day of wiping out. Unleashed on the world is the greatest power of wiping out ever. The atomic nuclear warfare comes on at the end of World War. It's like this crescendo. The war ends in the last week of the Shmita, this whole 7-year period. And actually in Berlin, the Allies have a victory parade. It's on the day of the end of the Shmita. So world history, this launches America as the superpower of the world, even the Cold War, in the year of the Shmita. Now, if you go one more period, you go 4 Shmitas later, 28 years, Shmita can mean also the fall of a nation. It gets you to 1973. Key point. 1973, America decides to legalize the killing of unborn children. Same sin ancient Israel was judged for. And that same year also is the year America loses its first war. Vietnam collapses. On the same day, August 15th, that America won the war before in the other Shmita. And so you have this thing of the fall now. And in the same year of that fall, you have the World Trade Center, which marks the same years that America legalized the killing of its children. Huh.
Okay, now with the amazing precision we've just seen in the past, what does that tell us about now and the future?
right back to It's Supernatural.
So Rabbi Jonathan has pointed out, when we have the Shmitas, that's every 7 years, meant for blessing by God, but if we're not following God's laws, it turns into a curse. Horrible things have happened in the history of Israel. Well, we're coming into a Shmita right now. When does it start?
The Shmita begins September 25th. I can remember happens to be my birthday, so it's easy. September 25th, and then it goes till September 13th, 2015. Now, let me tell you, a few things. One is, two cautions. God doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't necessarily have to happen every time. However, other caution is he can. And the thing is that what the pattern is generally this. At the beginning of the Shmita, you don't necessarily notice.
Listen, if I was God, I wouldn't even be waiting for a Shmita with all of that. I mean, what we're doing is we're poking our finger in God's eyes as a nation here in the United States. I mean, I'm glad that I'm not God. God's got so much more mercy than me. But if you study the Bible, he does have a point of judgment.
Yeah, and that's the dangerous thing, because when you combine this all together, where America's going, when you combine the harbingers appearing and continuing, when you combine the Shmita, that's the thing. The thing is this: in the last two Shmitas, this is 2001, and then it's 2007 and 8. Yeah. You had the mystery is getting more and more precise and intense. It's a buildup, because in 2001 you have the greatest stock market collapse in history happens on the exact day appointed in the Bible, Elul 29, to wipe out the financial accounts. 7 years later, 2008, you have the other greatest crash in American history, bigger, and it happens on the exact same day appointed in the Bible. The two greatest crashes happen exactly 7 Hebrew years apart, down to the days, the hours, to the seconds. So the mystery is getting more intense.
He's going so fast. Yeah. I want you to catch. It is so precise what he's saying. It's the year, the day, the second. I mean, what an awesome God we serve.
Yeah, and the thing is, what this indicates, Sid, is there's an intensifying. That means that the nation, we are progressing towards judgment. And that's exactly what's happening. It's in America. So, now, again, God doesn't have to do anything when we say, but I'd be aware.
All right, tell me the exact date it starts and it ends.
September 25th, and that's the start.
Of this year.
And usually, again, at the beginning, it's not necessarily so noticeable, but if something is chosen for this year, then it's usually as it builds up to its peak, that's usually when things happen, okay? Which is September 13th of 2015. Now, there's also, we've talked about this before, happens to be with the blood moon period as well. Because the blood moon period is a year and a half. Well, we're in that half part, but the year, what's left, is totally Shmita. So it's all happening at the same time as Shmita.
It's like a convergence of warnings.
It seems. And the other thing is that, here's another thing, Sid. In the Bible, one of the signs of judgment is the darkening of the sun. Now, we're not saying every eclipse is. However, there's something there. Here's the thing. Get this. When that peak day comes, Elul 29, it's going to be a solar eclipse marking that day, the great day of nullification. At the end of the Shmita, it's going to be a solar eclipse the same day. When we talked about the tower, putting this all together. When that tower, they just recently put the spire to make it the tallest in America, the day they put it up was another solar eclipse. And when the last time, Sid, when a solar eclipse happened on Elul 29, was 1987, you had the greatest wipeout of Wall Street in history right after that. So not saying things have to, but things
all right, this begs the question. You have been studying this, but not just studying as a scholar, which you are, but by revelation. I want you to tell me what you think is going to happen.
I believe, whether it happens in this period or not, and I'd be ready, I believe, without any question, a great shaking is coming to America. And this shaking will affect the economy, will affect the financial realm, and can be very well more than either of those realms, but it will affect that. Something like a famine in the land. I believe even services and infrastructure will stop. So I believe a great warning, and it's in God's mercy. Because at this point, without shaking, I don't believe there can be revival. God's heart is revival. But we have to be ready. Anything that can be shaken will be shaken.
Okay, we only have 2 minutes left. What is this
Seventh Shmita?
seventh Shmita or /
Okay, there's so much, and there's so many, so I'll just touch on this. Okay, when you get to the seventh Shmita, that's 7 times 7 years, 49 years, it leads to the Jubilee. So even the Jubilee is linked to the mystery of the Shmita. Jubilee is about restoring, getting back your land, getting back your home, you're restored to your inheritance. Well, 2,000 years ago, Israel lost its inheritance, lost the land. Well, what happened is, remember that the Jubilee only starts at the year after a Shmita. Well, the restoration of Israel begins 1917 with a Balfour Declaration when they give the land back to Israel, Britain. 1917 follows the year of the Shmita. It's the next thing. It's like Jubilee. It's restoration of the land. If you go 7 Shmitas later from 1917, it brings you to 1967, the restoration of Jerusalem, right after the year of the Shmita.
So nice.
The restoration. And the next one is coming. If you go 7 more Shmitas, it comes to the next Shmita is 2015. The year after is 2016. I'm not saying God has to, but it's amazing what he's done. He's just amazing. He's in charge of everything.
So this 7th Shmita that is coming up could be the wrap-up, not just for America, but everything.
Could be prophetic. And again, we can't put God in a box, but isn't it amazing? The Shmita holds the mystery, really, of everything.
But the mystery of everything has to be simple.
Yes.
It's in Yeshua,
Yes.
Jesus, the Jewish Messiah.
Yes.
Repent of your sins. Ask Jesus to be your Lord, live inside of you, start reading the Bible, and I'm telling you, if you walk in the same peace that I'll train you and equip you to walk in that God's given me, nothing will bother you, nothing.